Welcome back to the discussion, National Security, Defense, and Educating Our Future Industry Leaders, sponsored by George Mason University on Federal News Radio, part of Federal News Network. My guest today is retired Vice Admiral John Cotton from the U.S. Navy. He's the Executive MBA Adjunct Faculty at the School of Business for George Mason University, and I'm your moderator, Scott Masioni. So, Admiral, we were talking about manpower a little bit earlier, and one of the things that we neglected to mention was the security clearance process, which at this point is a little slow. There's a big backlog. So can you tell us a little bit about what the sort of landscape of that is right now, and where is it going?
Sure. First of all, you're absolutely right. Clearance is a showstopper for some folks. The longest I've heard is about 2 years for some people.
Yeah.
The fastest, with White House intervention might be a couple months, but in most cases it's 9 months to a year to get a clearance. This is why I tell people who are in the military, in the government, who have a clearance, that might be your most valuable asset, is just having that clearance to be able to transition between jobs with that clearance. Even if you go active or inactive for a while, just having that clearance will make it faster for you to get into the process. So when we're talking about replacing the workforce, there are literally perhaps hundreds, perhaps thousands of people just in this area who are awaiting their clearance to work on some government program. So it is an issue.
Now, DoD is going to be taking over the security clearance process here pretty soon.
They sure are.
And they've done this in the past. They went to OPM, now they're going back to DoD again. Do you think that might help speed things up a bit?
I really do.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate customer. They want to have it happen. They can set the standards. We do it internally. There's no reason they can't do this properly. I think just policing and setting the standards is important. With that said, I got to tell you that the military recruiters who are looking for our nation's youth, I'll say 17 to 24 years old, to join our military, the numbers today are pretty startling, with about 3/4 of our youth, or about 3 out of 4, not qualified to join the military.
Right.
Due to physical reasons, due to not performing in high school, due to drug use, due to crime, due to some other psychological issues, especially legal drug use, Ritalin or something like that. There's a lot of issues that go on. So just the whole base of people we can draw from, both in the contractors and in the military, is diminished. And on top of that, 3.5% unemployment. It's real competition for who our next workers and leaders are going to be.
So a lot of the people you work with are that specialized small group, and as your students, what has been their experience with the security clearance process, and how have you been sort of teaching and bringing that sort of expertise in?
If there's one word, you would say frustration.
Sure.
Because let's say you're a smaller company, you win a contract, you want to scale up as fast as you can. If it takes a year to scale up, oh my gosh, you're not meeting what you promised to the customer. So that's where the frustration comes in.
And when they come in, so they have their security clearance in most cases, they're coming to get a degree from you, you're helping them with that. What's some of the differences within the degrees that you work with, and can you just explain a little bit how GMU works?
That's a great question. Well, we were talking on break. GMU is the largest university in Virginia, with 37,000 students from over 150 countries. And so there are many undergraduate programs. The School of Business has a couple MBA programs. The one I'm in is the National Security Residency for the Executive MBA. So you have a full-time MBA, you've got a part-time MBA, which is going to school at night, and then the executive MBA program. The difference is about 10 years working experience. So in the executive MBA program, the average age is about 38, maybe half are govies, I call them, half are civies, some are in the military. And the real beauty of the course is having these folks sit down, maybe 15 to 20 people, over the course of 16 months, and particularly in the one week residency, and then just talking about the issues they have. And in most cases, it's the government people said, I had no idea we were putting you people through this. Just the bidding process, the request for information, the push for profitability, the competing for contracts. You think you're going to win, and all of a sudden Congress has a continuing resolution, so there's no new contracts for a while. It gets very frustrating for some of those smaller companies, not so much for the big companies with deeper pockets. So we talk about that big, medium, small size company, what it's like to work for each one, and then the issues they all have.
Do you think it's the congressional cycle that is a bigger hindrance, or is it the acquisition system itself, which is something that Congress and DoD have been trying to change?
It's everything.
Yeah.
But, I've also talked to people that said the best customer in the world is the Defense Department. They've got the biggest budget. They've got rules that are written down. They're predictable on a one-year process. You can rebid the following year. So that's easy compared to someone else who just picks what they like the best or something. So it can get frustrating too because of Congress, the continuing resolution. But on top of all this, you have to execute. And we have so many rules and regulations in our acquisition process. We talk about this where in some cases, the process is more important than the product. So the output gets delayed, and we look at the Joint Strike Fighter, for example, which was due many years ago, and here it is, being delayed, and then the repercussions of that across the other aircraft and what you have to do to make up for that. Also that we have combatant commanders and the services that have the assets that they need.
Now, some of those reforms that we were talking about, they pushed down decision-making authority from milestones down to the service chiefs. They got rid of paperwork, empowered PMs. Are any of those really stand out to you as something that can actually help the system the most?
I like that it's back to the services.
Yeah.
Rather than being centralized, which tends to be a little more political.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about Congress and how jobs votes districts re-election. We talk about how service chiefs really have three priorities. They have people, operations and maintenance, and acquisition, buying new things. And a lot of times there's only money enough for two, particularly when you're at war. And so Congress has to make up for that. And so we talk about that 2-year process, about in the building making decisions, and then telling Congress about that, and then to the president for the president's budget. And it's also interesting about this 2-year budget development process. Technology, Murphy's Law used to be about, Moore's Law, about 1.5 years of technology change. We have speakers that come in and talk about 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Technology changes. And so if you're delivering something to our special forces, for example, it has to be very rapid delivery. So fortunately, each of the services are looking at rapid technology delivery processes, which I think is very healthy.
Well, we're going to take one more break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about something that has to do with rapid technology delivery, which is the JEDI contract, bringing in cloud, so something that's always controversial. My guest today is retired Vice Admiral John Cotton from the U.S. Navy. He's the Executive MBA Adjunct Faculty at the School of Business for George Mason University. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione, on the discussion National Security, Defense, and Educating Our Future Industry Leaders, sponsored by George Mason University on Federal News Radio, part of Federal News Network.